Canada is about to spend over $30 billion on a fighter jet that, on some days, can't even get off the ground. So the real question isn't what we're buying, it's why we're buying it. I'm Bo Kaufman, and this is the Sanity Project. Today, we're stepping into one of the most expensive and controversial defense decisions in Canadian history. The F-35 versus the Saab Gripen. Not just a debate about aircraft, but about cost, sovereignty, and whether Canada is making decisions in its own best interest, or simply following a path set decades ago. To break it all down, I've brought in two investigative voices you've come to know, Rachel Bennett and Michael Reeves. They've gone through the data, the procurement history, and the political context, and what they found raises some serious questions. Let's get into it.
So I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you are a Canadian pilot.
Okay.
And you're stationed out in the freezing, absolute desolation of the high Arctic. And it's the year 2026.
Setting the scene. I like it.
Right. So a Russian bomber is actively probing your airspace.
Yeah.
Right. They're pushing the boundaries of NORAD territory.
Which happens, all the time.
Exactly. So you sprint out to the tarmac to intercept it. And you're getting into the most advanced $30 billion stealth fighter in human history.
The pride of the fleet.
Yeah. You strap in, you initiate the whole startup sequence, and you just can't take off.
Oh, wow.
And the kicker here, the really crazy part, you aren't grounded because of the sub-zero weather.
Right.
And you aren't grounded because of some mechanical failure, like a bad engine.
Okay, then why?
You are sitting there, basically a sitting duck, because a proprietary logistics computer that's sitting 3,000 miles away in the United States didn't authorize a digital handshake for your landing gear.
That sounds like a dystopian geopolitical thriller.
It totally does. But welcome to the deep dive, everyone, because according to this massive stack of documents we are looking at today, that is the literal architectural reality of modern defense procurement.
Yeah, it really is. And, that reality is just tearing Canadian defense policy apart right now.
Completely tearing it apart. So today, our mission for this deep dive is to completely unpack this. It's this generational, highly polarized debate in Canada right now.
The big one, the Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning II-SIC versus pivoting to the Swedish Saab Gripen EF.
Right. And, if you are paying taxes in Canada right now, or honestly, if you're just fascinated by how modern militaries even function, you have to understand that you're not just buying an airplane here.
No, not at all. You are buying a geopolitical relationship.
Yes, and that relationship is currently under a massive microscope.
Exactly. And to guide us through all this, we're looking at a remarkably diverse stack of sources today.
We really are. What do we have?
Well, we have a highly detailed June 2025 Congressional Budget Office report, the CBO.
Right, the heavy data.
Yeah, it digs into the raw, unvarnished data on fighter aircraft availability. Then we have an Ecos Politics polling release from December 2025.
So really recent.
Very recent, showing exactly where the public stands. We're also looking at some defense analysis from the NATO Association of Canada, the NAOC.
Oh, okay.
Alongside a couple of, frankly, incredibly fiery documents.
Oh, yeah.
There's an editorial from Hushkit Aviation and this highly opinionated policy briefing document that's been circulating around Ottawa.
Yeah, and I have to warn you right off the bat, if you're listening to this, some of the authors in these sources are throwing absolute haymakers at the government.
Oh, totally. They do not hold back.
No. We are talking about documents that accuse defense officials of running a, quote, rigged process.
Yeah.
And editorials that frame the F-35 as a literal sovereignty trap designed to turn allied nations into vassal states.
Strong words.
Very strong words. But we need to be clear here.
Mm-hmm.
We are not here to referee this fight. We're not taking a side today, and we aren't endorsing any of these viewpoints, whether they lean left or right. Our goal is entirely analytical.
Just the facts.
Exactly. We're going to break down the actual data, the mechanics, and the underlying logic these critics and proponents are using to throw these punches. We lay out the map. You decide where you want to navigate.
Exactly. When someone claims an aircraft is a sovereignty trap, we need to look at the software architecture they're pointing to, right?
Right.
And when someone claims a jet is too expensive, well, we need to look at the Auditor General's ledger. We are dissecting the how and the why.
So let's start with the why now, because, Canada's relationship with the F-35 isn't some brand new 2025 phenomenon.
Oh, definitely not.
Right. If we want to understand why this decision has suddenly become a massive crisis, we have to look at the institutional momentum. How long has the Royal Canadian Air Force actually been tethered to this specific jet?
Well, you really have to rewind to an era before smartphones even existed.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Canada officially joined the Joint Strike Fighter program, which is the massive multinational development consortium that eventually birthed the F-35 back in 1997.
1997.
1997.
So the military has been working on this single procurement project for over a quarter of a century?
Yes. And joining the Joint Strike Fighter program wasn't just about, like, throwing some development money into a pot and waiting for a jet to emerge 20 years later.
Right.
It was a deep structural integration of Canadian aerospace manufacturing into the global supply chain.
Oh, okay. So building the parts.
Exactly. Canadian companies have been bidding on and winning contracts to build components for the F-35 for decades now. The whole logic was that if you are a partner nation, your domestic industries get a piece of the pie.
Okay, so long before any Canadian Prime Minister ever signed a final purchase order to bring these jets to an actual runway, the domestic aerospace industry was already deeply financially intertwined with Lockheed Martin.
Deeply intertwined. And that momentum carried all the way to 2023 when the Canadian government finally finalized a deal to acquire 88 F-35s.
Right, to replace their aging CF-18 Hornets.
Exactly. They secured the initial purchase for the first 16 jets. And at that point, the competition was supposedly settled. The F-35 won. Saab's Gripen came in a respectable second, and the path forward was cemented.
But then the geopolitical tectonic plates shifted.
Like it.
Because by March 2025, Prime Minister Mark Carney ordered a formal, immediate review of the remaining F-35 deal.
Yeah, he hit the brakes.
He essentially hit the emergency brake on everything after those first 16 jets, and the sources point very specifically to the trigger for that pause.
Right, and it wasn't about the plane itself.
No, this wasn't a sudden concern over thrust-to-weight ratios or aerodynamics.
Yeah.
It was macro-level diplomacy.
Yeah, the document cites severely strained U.S.-Canada trade relations and incredibly public emerging threats to Canadian economic and political sovereignty from U.S. President Donald Trump.
Right.
I mean, when the leader of the nation that manufactures your absolute primary defense asset is publicly threatening your borders and your economy, the calculus of national security fundamentally breaks down.
You don't want the guy holding the remote control to your Air Force to also be the guy hitting you with punitive tariffs.
Precisely. And that sudden geopolitical shock is exactly why Saab's Gripen EF is suddenly back on the table.
Wow.
The Canadian government is now openly considering a dual fleet approach, breaking that 2023 commitment.
Which brings us to one of the most explosive, controversial claims in our source stack regarding how that 2023 commitment was made in the first place.
Oh, the policy brief.
Yes, the policy briefing document we reviewed. It argues that the 2022 open competition, you know, the one where the F-35 officially beat the Gripen, was structurally flawed from the jump.
Yeah, the brief goes so far as to call the entire evaluation process a confirmation rather than a true contest.
Right. They use the word rigged heavily, but I want to push back on that word for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
I'm trying to look at this from the perspective of a defense planner, right? If an Air Force spends 25 years integrating its future training pipelines, its logistical doctrines, and its core NATO alliance frameworks around one specific technological platform, is it really a scandal when that platform wins the bid?
That's a fair point.
Like, think about it in tech terms. It's like a massive corporation trying to switch its entire infrastructure from Mac to Windows after 25 years.
Oh, that would be a nightmare.
Right. It isn't just about buying a new laptop. Your entire server network, your employee muscle memory, your legacy software licenses, everything is built for Apple.
Yeah.
So the Gripen might be a fantastic PC, but the military has been typing on a Mac keyboard since 1997. Is that rigging the system, or is that just the unavoidable reality of long-term strategic alignment?
That is the exact tension the defense analysts grapple with in these documents. The institutional defense perspective is that modern militaries require decades of foresight.
Yeah.
You cannot pivot a multi-billion-dollar operational doctrine overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Interoperability with the United States sharing data seamlessly in a battle space takes decades to cultivate. Therefore, evaluating the F-35 favorably because it fits the ecosystem you spent 25 years building is entirely rational.
But the critics in the policy brief see that ecosystem as a blinder.
Exactly. The critics argue that this 25-year alignment created such an overwhelming institutional bias that decision makers became functionally blind to the actual physical flaws of the aircraft itself. They argue the evaluation framework was written by people who already assumed the F-35 was the answer, so they designed the test to favor the specific capabilities the F-35 excels at while minimizing the areas where it struggles.
Okay, I see.
And yet, it is crucial to point out a fact highlighted across the sources. Despite that institutional headwind, the Saab Gripen still passed all the mandatory capability thresholds.
Wait, it did?
Yes, it met the rigorous requirements set out by the Canadian military. It didn't fail. It just finished second.
Okay, and the moment that geopolitical alignment with the U.S. began to fracture in 2025, those blinders came off. Which brings us to the most universal trigger for taxpayer outrage: the money.
Always the money.
If political tension hit the pause button on this deal, the ballooning budget is what threatens to detonate it entirely. We have to dig into the mechanics of this cost explosion because the numbers in these sources are staggering.
The financial trajectory of this procurement is just a textbook example of defense economics gone awry.
So let's track the actual ledger here. According to the documents, back in 2010, the original estimate presented to the Canadian public for 65 F-35s was $9 billion.
An estimate that, it must be noted, was almost instantly flagged as highly improbable by the parliamentary budget officer at the time.
Right, so the watchdogs were barking from day one.
Oh, absolutely.
But fast forward to 2023, the government finalizes the deal for 88 jets, and the price tag is officially $19 billion.
Right.
So the cost has more than doubled before a single pilot has even seen the aircraft on a Canadian runway.
Yes, but that isn't the end of the story.
No, it's not. Because in June 2025, Auditor General Karen Hogan releases a report that absolutely shatters that $19 billion illusion.
Yeah, the Auditor General's report recalculates the true holistic cost of the program at $27.7 billion.
Hold on, I need to stop you there because the sources explicitly mention an additional fee on top of that $27.7 billion.
Yes, they do.
They cite a $5.5 billion requirement just to reach what they call full operational capability.
Right.
What does that even mean? How do you spend $27.7 billion on fighter jets and then need another $5.5 billion just to make them fully operational? Like, are we talking about a $5 billion hidden fee?
It's not a hidden fee so much as it is the reality of ancillary infrastructure.
Okay, explain that.
When you buy a fifth-generation fighter jet, you aren't just buying the titanium and the engine. You have to build highly specialized, secure, climate-controlled hangars.
Oh, because of the stealth coating?
Yes, and we'll get into that. You also have to install entirely new classified server farms to handle the jet's logistical software. You have to retrain thousands of maintainers, purchase new ground support equipment, and integrate new weapon systems.
Wow.
So that $5.5 billion is the cost of modifying the entire Royal Canadian Air Force infrastructure to physically handle the aircraft.
Okay, so we are looking at a total minimum acquisition cost of $33.2 billion.
Yes.
From $9 billion to over $33 billion.
And that $33.2 billion doesn't even account for the ongoing crisis with the aircraft's critical internal modernization program, which the military calls Block 4.
Okay, break down Block 4 for us, because this term is thrown around a lot in the sources.
Yeah.
What exactly is it, and why is it costing so much money?
Right, so Block 4 is the massive hardware and software upgrade that the F-35 desperately needs to remain competitive against modern Chinese and Russian threats. The original F-35s flying today have computing processors and electronic warfare systems that were designed years ago. Block 4 introduces a new core processor known as TR3, or Technology Refresh 3, that massively increases the jet's computing power.
So it can carry new stuff.
Exactly, allowing it to carry new advanced weapons and drastically improve its radar and electronic jamming capabilities.
So it's like upgrading the motherboard and the operating system of the jet so it can run 2025 software instead of 2015 software.
Exactly. But the U.S. Government Accountability Office reported in September 2025 that this Block 4 upgrade is a complete logistical nightmare.
How bad?
It is currently $6 billion over budget and delayed until at least 2031.
Wait, meaning Canada is buying these jets right now in 2025 and 2026, but they will not get the fully promised upgraded capabilities for over half a decade?
That's right.
They're buying an incomplete supercomputer.
Yes, and this is exactly where the June 2025 Congressional Budget Office report becomes absolutely vital to understanding the true cost. Because the $33.2 billion, that's just the acquisition cost.
Oh, right.
As defense economists say, buying the jet is just the down payment. Flying and maintaining it is where you bleed.
The day-to-day burn rate.
Precisely. The CBO dug deep into the operating and support costs, the O&S costs. They analyzed the data through 2023, and they found that the program-wide operating and support costs for the US F-35 fleet exceeded $5 billion for that year alone.
$5 billion just to fly them.
For 1 year. Now, the CBO does offer a silver lining. They note that the per-hour flying costs for the specific variant Canada is buying the F-35A, which is the conventional takeoff version, have finally stabilized after a long period of decline.
Stabilize, sure. But stabilize at what altitude? I mean, if my credit card bill stabilizes at $10,000 a month, I'm still going bankrupt.
That's a great way to put it, because it's a very high altitude.
Yeah.
The CBO points out that the F-35A's operating costs per aircraft are currently sitting at a level similar to the F-15E Strike Eagle.
Wait, the F-15E is a massive twin-engine heavy strike fighter built in the 1980s. And the F-35A is a single-engine fighter that was specifically designed and promised to be as cheap to operate as the lightweight F-16s and F-18s it is replacing.
Yes, but the data shows it is significantly more expensive than those older jets. And just for context, the CBO notes the Navy variant, the F-35C, remains vastly more expensive to operate than even the A model.
Wow. And the sources intensely contrast this burn rate with the Saab Gripen, right?
They do.
The NATO Association of Canada Defense Analysis and the Hush Kit editorial both hammer home the claim that the Gripen offers a fundamentally different economic model. They claim a decidedly lower maintenance footprint and a radically lower hourly operating cost.
Yes, Saab's entire engineering philosophy for the Gripen E was centered on cost efficiency. They knew they couldn't compete with the massive U.S. defense budget, so they designed an aircraft that smaller nations could actually afford to fly every single day without cannibalizing the rest of their military budgets.
I mean, look at it from your own household budget perspective. If you look at the sources, they highlight a glaring trend. Every single F-35 cost estimate over the last 15 years has been wrong in the exact same direction.
Up.
Always up. At what point does a 15-year pattern of constant underestimation stop being just a series of accounting errors and start becoming a systemic institutional strategy?
That is the crux of the financial argument against the Joint Strike Fighter program. Critics argue that the initial artificially low estimates back in the early 2000s were politically required to get partner nations to sign the dotted line.
Right, because if Lockheed Martin had told Canada in 2010 that the jet would cost $33 billion and the software would be delayed a decade, Canada never would have joined.
Exactly. But once you are locked in and your domestic industries are building parts, the costs can rise. By then, you are too deeply invested politically, financially, and doctrinally to pull out.
It is the ultimate sunk cost fallacy applied to international defense procurement.
It really is.
So we have an aircraft that is objectively soaring in cost, bleeding national budgets dry, which logically forces us to ask, what is Canada actually getting for $33.2 billion?
Right.
If you are paying ultra-luxury prices, you expect uncompromising, flawless performance. You expect a shield that never fails.
In military terms, you expect a remarkably high rate of return on your investment, which is measured in availability rates. Basically, can the asset perform the mission when called upon?
And according to the hard data in our sources, the answer to that question is genuinely shocking. I'm going to drop the most provocative data point from the policy brief right now.
Let's hear it.
A 2025 paper published by the Canadian Forces College found that the F-35A's full mission-capable rate in 2023 was only 36%.
36%.
Let that sink in, nearly two-thirds of the fleet.
Yeah.
Furthermore, the sources cite on-the-record testimony from Republican Senator Roger Wicker, the chair of the U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee, from late 2024. He stated plainly to Congress that too many of these multi-million-dollar jets are simply sitting idle.
Right. And to understand why a $33 billion investment is sitting idle, we have to look closely at the methodology that June 2025 CBO report. The terminology they use is critical.
Okay.
We have to establish the vital difference between basic availability and full mission capable rates.
Yeah, break the maths down for us. What do these terms actually mean on a flight line?
Okay, so basic availability simply means the aircraft is physically capable of flying and performing at least one of its designated primary missions. It can get in the air and do something useful.
Okay, like a basic patrol.
Exactly. According to the CBO, the fleet-wide availability rate for F-35s has hovered between 50 and 60% recently.
Which, just to point out, is still below the U.S. military's own minimum target of 65%.
Correct. It's failing to meet the minimum baseline. But full mission capable is a vastly more stringent metric.
How so?
A jet is only full mission capable if every single system on that aircraft is 100% operational. Let's say an F-35 can take off, its radar works perfectly, its weapons bay doors open, but the advanced infrared sensor used for night vision has a software glitch.
Okay.
That aircraft is not full mission capable. It can fly daytime patrols, but it cannot execute the full complex spectrum of combat operations it was designed for.
Oh, I see.
And when you are buying a multi-role stealth fighter, those complex interconnected sensors are the exact reason you are paying $33 billion.
Right. So when that Canadian Forces College paper cites a 36% full mission capable rate, they are telling the public that on any given Tuesday, nearly two-thirds of the Air Force's primary combat fleet cannot actually perform every task they were built to do.
Exactly. And the CBO report highlighted an absolutely stunning comparison regarding how these airframes age over time.
What did they find?
They tracked the availability rates of the F-35 fleet and compared them directly to older, legacy non-stealth fighters. The CBO found that the average availability rate of a relatively new 7-year-old F-35A is roughly equivalent to a 36-year-old F-16CD.
Wait, I'm stuck on this. We are buying a weapon of war. It's supposed to get shot at, fly through storms, endure massive G-forces, and operate in the harshest conditions on Earth.
Right.
And you are telling me that a 7-year-old marvel of modern engineering has the same physical reliability as an airframe that was built when Ronald Reagan was in office.
It sounds wild, I know.
How does a 7-year-old plane break down as often as a 36-year-old plane? That makes zero sense structurally. How is that acceptable to defense planners?
It seems counterintuitive to everything we know about technological progress, absolutely. But this requires us to delve into the physical chemistry and the software architecture of stealth technology itself.
Okay, unpack that.
We have to look at the broader aerospace data. Historically, stealth aircraft like the F-35, the older F-22 Raptor, and the B-2 Spirit bomber consistently exhibit drastically lower availability rates than non-stealth fighters like the F-15 or the F/A-18.
But why? What makes stealth so fragile? Is it just newer, buggier technology?
It is deeply physical. A large part of the downtime is driven by the maintenance of the stealth skin itself.
Right.
To remain virtually invisible to enemy radar, an F-35 is meticulously covered in highly classified radar-absorbent material, or RAM. And this isn't just paint. It is a highly sensitive, chemically complex coating designed to absorb and dissipate radar waves.
Okay.
And it's incredibly delicate. The RAM degrades from the sheer friction of flying at max speeds. It degrades from rain erosion. It degrades from extreme temperature fluctuations.
So a heavy rainstorm can literally peel off the jet's primary defense mechanism.
Over time, yes. And reapplying that stealth coating isn't like slapping a new coat of paint on a Honda.
Right.
It requires massive amounts of time in specialized climate-controlled facilities. The chemicals have specific curing times. The surface has to be perfectly smooth. You aren't just doing mechanical work. Your maintainers are essentially doing high-end chemistry on the skin of the aircraft after every few flights.
Okay, so the skin is fragile, but what about the inside?
Add to the chemistry the sheer complexity of the F-35 sensor fusion. The F-35 is famous for gathering millions of data points from all around the jet radar, infrared, electronic signals fusing it all together, and projecting a simplified, God's eye view of the battlefield directly onto the visor of the pilot's helmet.
Which sounds like magic.
It is an astonishing technological feat. But when a jet is a flying supercomputer running millions of lines of code, a software glitch or a corrupted data file can ground the aircraft just as easily as a blown turbine engine.
Wow.
This incredible world-beating capability comes at the incredibly steep cost of extreme fragility and intense, constant maintenance demands.
With that fragility we just talked about,
Yeah.
that need for pristine, climate-controlled hangars to fix stealth paint, it crashes headfirst into the physical reality of Canadian geography.
It really does.
Which brings us to the core argument of the defense analysts, the mission mismatch. If you're a mechanic staring down a blizzard in the Yukon, a climate-controlled hangar isn't just expensive, it's a geographic impossibility.
It's exactly.
You have an aircraft that is a flying, delicate supercomputer requiring intense maintenance, so you have to ask, what exactly does the Royal Canadian Air Force actually need these planes to do on a daily basis?
You have to match the tool to the task. The most advanced hammer in the world is useless if your job is cutting glass.
Exactly. Let's contrast the two core operational missions described in our sources. The F-35 is structurally and doctrinally designed for what the military calls day one penetration.
Right.
Its primary reason for existing is to use that delicate stealth coating to sneak undetected into highly defended peer adversary airspace, think penetrating the integrated air defenses of Russia or China, survive the initial overwhelming wave of surface-to-air missiles, and strike critical targets to open a corridor for non-stealth aircraft.
It is the ultimate offensive, tip-of-the-spear weapon.
But the sources, specifically the NAOC analysis and the policy brief, point out that day one penetration is not Canada's daily reality.
No, not at all.
Canada's primary day-to-day defense mandate involves patrolling 10 million square kilometers of vast, empty, brutally freezing Arctic territory. Their primary job is fulfilling NORAD intercept duties, scrambling jets to fly up to the edge of the Arctic Circle to visually identify and escort whichever Russian bomber is probing the airspace that week.
And when you compare the specific engineering specifications highlighted in the defense analysis, the Saab Gripen's design philosophy aligns much more closely with that unforgiving Canadian reality.
Let's look at the hard numbers. The Gripen E has a stated combat radius of roughly 800 miles.
Okay.
The F-35A's combat radius is about 670 miles.
Right.
Now, 130 miles might not sound like a massive difference in a global conflict, but when you are patrolling the high Arctic, where alternative runways are non-existent and the weather can turn deadly in minutes, those extra 130 miles of fuel matter immensely.
Oh, absolutely.
It is the difference between completing an intercept and having to turn back.
And beyond just the fuel range, you have to look at the structural infrastructure requirements. The NATO Association of Canada piece details Saab's concept of the efficient support solution.
What's that?
The Gripen wasn't designed for massive, pristine American superbases. It's fundamentally designed for austere, harsh, freezing winter environments.
Because it's Swedish.
Exactly. Sweden built the Gripen with a very specific, paranoid scenario in mind. defending against a massive Russian invasion where all their primary air bases are immediately destroyed by cruise missiles.
Right. The sources note that because of that design philosophy, the Gripen can literally land on regular reinforced highways in the middle of a forest.
Yes. The landing gear is reinforced for rough landings. It requires significantly fewer parts, and the parts it does have are designed to be easily interchangeable. The entire aircraft is designed so that a small, mobile team of technicians in the Swedish model, this often includes minimally trained conscripts, can pull up in a couple of trucks, refuel the jet, reload its missiles, and turn it around for another combat sortie in a matter of minutes out in the freezing cold on a highway.
That's wild. And the F-35? How does it handle a highway in a blizzard?
It doesn't.
Yeah.
The F-35 requires highly specialized, permanent airbase infrastructure. It needs secure, fiber optic data links to update its logistics software. It needs those climate-controlled hangars for the stealth coating maintenance. It requires highly specialized, heavy equipment just to handle its armaments.
So it's tied to a base.
You cannot easily deploy a squadron of F-25s to a remote, frozen gravel airstrip in the Yukon without bringing a massive, incredibly vulnerable logistical tail with you.
But wait, I have to play devil's advocate here on behalf of the sources, because the NEOC article brings up a very specific counter-argument that throws a wrench into this whole Gripen is perfect for the Arctic narrative.
Okay, lay it on me.
What about the infamous 2021 Department of National Defense leak?
Ah, yes. The score sheet.
That leak reportedly showed an internal, highly classified Canadian military scoring chart where the F-35 actually scored higher than the Gripen across all evaluated categories.
Right.
So if the Gripen is structurally so perfect for the Arctic, why did the military's own internal aerospace engineers score the F-35 higher in their own metrics?
That leaked score sheet remains one of the most fiercely contested documents within the Canadian defense community.
Really?
Oh, yeah. As the NAOC article points out, critics immediately pushed back on the methodology of that internal evaluation. For instance, the Swedish business magazine Affärsvärlden reported that the Canadian evaluators allegedly penalized the Gripen with a massive risk coefficient simply because it was considered a new series aircraft.
Wait, what?
Whereas the F-35 was older and therefore considered a more mature known quantity.
So let me get this straight. They docked the Gripen points for being a newer design.
Essentially, yes.
Oh,
They penalized it for unproven programmatic risk.
That
Like
seems
this.
backward.
But more importantly, the NAOC highlights a massive structural flaw in the evaluation. It remains entirely unclear what version of the F-35 was actually being scored on that 2021 spreadsheet.
Oh, because of Block 4.
Exactly. Was the F-35 graded on its actual physical capabilities as they existed in 2021? Or was the Royal Canadian Air Force grading the F-35 based on the hypothetical projected capabilities of that delayed $6 billion over-budget Block 4 upgrade we talked about earlier?
I see.
If you are comparing a physically existing Gripen to a theoretical, future, perfectly functioning F-35, the scores are inherently structurally skewed.
So we are back to comparing a real apple to a theoretical orange.
We are. But the NAOC piece ultimately draws a very clear, highly nuanced conclusion from all this incredibly dense capability data.
What's the takeaway?
They argue that the decision rests on prioritizing your ultimate strategic goal. If Canada's primary goal is seamless, frictionless NATO interoperability, the ability to plug instantly into American-led joint strike forces in overseas conflicts, the F-35 undeniably wins. But if the primary mandate is homeland defense, domestic patrol, and sovereign independent control of Canadian airspace, the Gripen is the vastly superior platform.
Which brings us to the philosophical, geopolitical heart of this entire debate.
The big question.
Right. If the Gripen clearly fits the domestic day-to-day mission of the Royal Canadian Air Force better, why is the F-35 considered the absolute unassailable standard for NATO? What does it actually mean to have military sovereignty in the 21st century?
This is exactly where the debate transcends aerospace engineering and moves directly into grand strategy and geopolitics.
Yeah, and the arguments presented in the Hush Kit editorial and the Ottawa policy brief are incredibly passionate on this specific point.
They are very vocal about this.
They argue that buying an F-35 is not a traditional product sale. You aren't walking into a Lockheed Martin dealership, buying a jet, and driving it home to your own garage. They describe the F-35 program as a contractual embrace.
And that embrace is entirely dictated by the software architecture and the global supply chain.
Exactly. Explain the logistics system to us, because this is where the sovereignty argument gets terrifying for critics. The U.S. government and Lockheed Martin retain ultimate cryptographic control over the aircraft's logistics system, right?
Yes, they do. The F-35 originally relied on a system called Aeronautic Logistics Information System, which is currently being transitioned to a new cloud-based system called Odin.
Right, Aleph to Odin.
Regardless of the acronym, the fundamental architecture is the same. The jet is constantly diagnosing itself. If a part is failing, the jet's computer talks to a centralized server owned by the U.S. and Lockheed Martin to order the spare part.
Okay.
Furthermore, the U.S. dictates the software upgrade schedule. They control access to the deepest levels of the mission systems. They own the global, centralized spare parts supply chain. The phrase used in the policy brief is chillingly precise. You don't own the plane, you own the invoice.
You own the invoice. And if we look at the real-world implications of that digital architecture, it means your national defense readiness is fundamentally tethered to a server farm in a foreign capital.
Yes.
The sources argue that tying your Air Force's operational readiness to the United States is a massive, unforgivable strategic vulnerability.
Especially when, as we established in the timeline at the beginning of the deep dive, the current volatile political leadership in the United States has directly, publicly threatened Canadian sovereignty and targeted the Canadian economy with punitive trade measures.
Right.
You are essentially handing the cryptographic keys to your primary air defense asset to a partner who is actively squeezing you economically.
The Hush Kid editorial frames it as a literal test of national dignity.
Yeah.
If a foreign power can, hypothetically, throttle your access to spare parts, or refuse to authorize a software patch because of a completely unrelated diplomatic dispute over lumber tariffs or dairy exports, you do not actually have a sovereign air force. You are a client state. You are a vassal.
And contrast that intensely integrated, highly dependent architecture with what Saab is offering on the other side of the table.
What are they offering?
The sources indicate that Saab is offering an unprecedented level of full technology transfer to Canada.
Okay, meaning what?
They are offering domestic assembly of the Gripen jets on Canadian soil. They are promising that long-term maintenance, repair, and overhaul capabilities will be built completely in-country.
Wow.
They estimate this technology transfer would create roughly 10,000 highly skilled local Canadian jobs. Saab is essentially saying to the Canadian government, we will give you the underlying blueprints, we will give you the source code, and we will give you the wrenches. You build it, you maintain it, you own it.
It is an explicit offer of industrial and operational autonomy.
It is.
But I have to stop and ask.
Yep.
Does buying the Gripen actually buy pure independence?
Oh.
Because I have to push back, again, based on the fine print in the sources. The NAOC article points out a massive glowing caveat to this Swedish independence narrative.
Right.
To integrate with NATO operations, which Canada is legally obligated to do the Gripen, relies on something called Link 16.
Ah, Link 16, yes.
Explain this, because it seems to undermine the whole argument. Link 16 is a strictly US-owned, heavily encrypted military communications software network.
Correct.
If the Gripen fundamentally needs American software just to talk to the rest of NATO in the sky, are we really buying true sovereignty? Or are we just choosing which specific US leash we want to wear around our necks?
That is the essential core counter-argument from the F-35 proponents.
Right.
However, the experts in the sources balance this by drawing a massive, highly technical distinction between the types of reliance we are talking about.
Okay, what's the difference?
Link 16 is, at its core, a communication network. It is a tactical data link using time division multiple access to securely share text, imagery, and voice data.
So it's a radio.
A very advanced radio. Relying on an allied communication standard to talk to other planes during a joint NATO mission implies some level of reliance. Absolutely. You need the encryption keys.
Right.
But there is a colossal fundamental difference between needing a US radio frequency to coordinate during a joint exercise over Poland versus requiring a foreign power's direct digital permission to modify your own jet's underlying operating system.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or needing their global logistics hub in Texas to approve the shipment of a spare landing gear part to a base in Alberta.
Okay, I see. So one is borrowing a highly secure walkie-talkie from your neighbor to join the neighborhood watch.
Good analogy.
And the other is letting your neighbor hold the physical title, the software passwords, and the mechanics keys to your car.
Exactly. A Gripen, whose Link 16 connection is severed, can still take off, fly over the Arctic, use its own sovereign, domestically controlled radar to track an intruder, and fire a missile using its own independent fire control software.
He's still a plane.
Yes. An F-35 that is deliberately cut off from the Ellis or Odin global logistics backbone will, eventually and inevitably, turn into a $33 billion paperweight. It will ground itself.
Wow. Okay, we have covered a staggering amount of highly technical, deeply strategic ground today.
We really have.
We've talked about tens of billions of dollars, stealth chemistry, basic versus full mission capable metrics, Arctic combat radiuses, the deep philosophical meaning of digital sovereignty.
It's a lot.
It is. So how is the actual everyday Canadian public reacting to this? Because usually defense procurement is a sleepy, incredibly niche topic that only policy wonks and aerospace engineers care about.
That is usually true, but not this time. The data shows the public is intensely engaged.
Let's look at the hard data on public sentiment. because the Ecos Politics poll from December 2025 shows that this debate has absolutely shattered the niche barrier and broken into the mainstream consciousness.
And we need to spend a moment on the methodology of this Ecos poll to establish its credibility, because in a polarized debate, people will attack the data.
Of course.
This wasn't a Twitter poll. It was conducted online using Ecos's Probit panel.
What does that mean?
The crucial detail here is that the Probit panel uses random recruitment methodologies. They actively call people and recruit them, meaning it isn't just an opt-in internet poll where highly motivated partisans flood the results.
Okay, so it's legit.
Very legit. It has a statistically sound margin of error. It is a highly legitimate, rigorous snapshot of national sentiment in late 2025.
And that rigorously captured sentiment is decisively, overwhelmingly shifting.
It is.
When the poll asked which fighter jet option is best for the future of Canada, a massive 72% of Canadians supported incorporating the Saab Gripen into the fleet.
72%.
To break those crosstabs down. 43% want to cancel the F-35 entirely and switch 100% to the Gripen, and another 29% favor the compromise, a mixed dual fleet of both Gripens and F-35s.
And the flip side of that data is equally telling.
Right. Only 13%, just slightly more than 1 in 8 Canadians, say Canada should ignore the noise, ignore the cost, and continue with the F-35 as its sole primary fighter jet.
What's fascinating to me here is the political breakdown, because defense spending usually falls along very predictable partisan lines.
Usually, yeah.
The poll highlights significant partisan splits, but with a massive underlying consensus. Decisive, overwhelming majorities of supporters for the Liberal Party, the NDP, the Green Party, and the Bloc Québécois strongly favor the Gripen.
It's essentially an impenetrable cross-party consensus on the left and the center of Canadian politics.
Yes, but even when you look at the Conservative Party base, where you traditionally find the absolute strongest support for U.S. military alignment and the F-35,
Yeah.
the ground is shifting.
Really?
Yeah? Nearly a third of conservative voters still favor sticking purely with the F-35. But a solid majority of conservative voters now want the Gripen incorporated in some form, either as a total replacement or in a mixed fleet.
Wow.
The costs and the sovereignty arguments are penetrating conservative circles as well.
But honestly, here's the most fascinating demographic note from the entire Ecos source. And if you are listening to this right now, this is the statistic that matters most.
Okay.
In a highly technical, jargon-heavy debate about fifth-generation sensor fusion, TR-3 core processors, and aerospace supply chains, only 12% of respondents were unsure or declined to answer the polling question.
Which, for any pollster, is an incredibly, astonishingly low, undecided rate for a dense defense policy question.
So what does this all mean? It tells us that you, the public, are heavily invested in this. You are paying attention to the numbers.
Right.
This isn't just a niche aerospace debate locked in a classified basement at the Department of National Defense. It is literally dinner table conversation across Canada right now. People care about sovereignty, and they care about $33 billion.
If we synthesize this public sentiment with the timeline we discussed earlier, it becomes blindingly clear how public pressure directly feeds into the political reality of 2026.
Yeah, how so?
Prime Minister Mark Carney didn't just wake up in April 2026 and spontaneously decide to consider a dual fleet approach in a vacuum.
Right, he was reactive.
He is staring down a public that is highly educated on and highly skeptical of the F-35's ballooning cost and its inherent sovereignty traps.
Exactly.
The Prime Minister is actively trying to balance the immense, unforgiving diplomatic pressure from Washington to maintain seamless NATO interoperability, which the F-35 alone provides, with a clear, roaring domestic demand from voters for sovereign Arctic defense, lower operational costs, and the 10,000 local manufacturing jobs the Gripen promises.
So the dual fleet approach isn't just a military compromise.
No, it is the political manifestation of a deeply divided strategic and economic reality.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive. We have covered a truly massive amount of terrain today.
We really have.
We unpacked the historical claims of a 25-year institutional momentum that critics argue rigged the entire procurement process. We stared down the barrel of an explosive $33.2 billion price tag for an incomplete jet, backed by stark CBO data showing a terrifying 36% full mission-capable rate. We navigated the physical tension between flying, freezing Arctic patrols and preparing for high-end day one stealth warfare. And we explored the deep philosophical debate over whether Canada should prioritize seamless digital integration with a politically volatile superpower or stake a massive claim for independent industrial sovereignty with a Swedish alternative.
It is a profound decision that will physically and doctrinally define the Royal Canadian Air Force for the next 40 years.
It will.
And as we close this analysis, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, one that builds on everything we've discussed today.
Go ahead.
As modern fighter jets continue to evolve, becoming less like traditional mechanical airplanes and more like interconnected flying supercomputers, we have to ask a very difficult, uncomfortable question about the future of warfare. The titanium, the wings, and the jet fuel are almost secondary now to the millions of lines of code and the encrypted data links. So as we move into this new era, if another nation holds the cryptographic keys to your software, if they control the digital heartbeat of your supply chain, and if they dictate when your radar gets an upgrade, will the very concept of a sovereign national air force soon become a total illusion, no matter whose flag is painted on the tail?
Wow. And that ultimately is the $33 billion question. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Our goal is always to look past the surface level talking points, dig into the methodology, and explore the real mechanics of these massive nation-defining decisions.
Absolutely.
Remember, when you hear headlines about stealth jets spending more time on the ground than in the air, or Swedish alternatives offering industrial independence, there is always a much deeper, more complex geopolitical current running beneath it. Keep questioning the data, keep exploring the complexities hidden behind the headlines, and we will see you next time.
And that's where the conversation lands. Not in speculation, but in facts, timelines, and decisions that affect every Canadian taxpayer. Whether you agree with Rachel and Michael or not, one thing is clear. This isn't just about a jet. It's about how decisions get made and who they're really made for. If you want more breakdowns like this, make sure you're following the Sanity Project. We cut through the noise and we stay grounded in the facts. I'm Bo Kaufman, and I'll see you in the next one.
If you want more facts and less fear, hit subscribe. Check out the next breakdown wherever you're listening or watching. Stay sane, Canada.